What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Today, I have a special guest. We have Dr. Lance Moore with us. Lance, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. I've been actually wanting to meet you for about 10 years now. I remember first hearing about you on the 50th anniversary when you published this book, Killing JFK, 50 Years, 50 Lies, From the Warren Commission to Bill O'Reilly, A History of Deceit in the JFK Assassination. I don't remember how I heard about this. It's just something that fell into place and came to me. Now, um, how long did it take you to write this book, and what inspired you to write this book?
Good questions to start with. I'm obviously proud of the book. It's kind of been a surprisingly successful book in that it is self-published. I'm an author to brag for a second, I'm an author of 9 books, and about half of them through traditional publishers. But guess what? A lot of traditional publishers don't want to hear from us conspiracy nuts about JFK, so I had to self-publish it. And but it actually, I probably made more money self-publishing it than with a traditional publisher because of the royalty payout. But anyway, that's off topic. The point is, I don't do this for money. The amount of time I spent on the book, it will never be reimbursed by book sales. Because, yeah, to answer your question, I don't know. It was a year, and I have a job, but a lot of time, and even before the year of actually writing it, I had become interested, probably like a lot of people, when I saw the Oliver Stone movie JFK. And I read in magazines, a lot of people attacked the movie, the mainstream press attacked the movie. And I thought, well, by golly, I'd like to know how much of that movie is true and how much of the mainstream media is false. And so I went straight to the library and started reading the Warren Commission report. Now I read the summary report that the government put out, available from everybody that wants a copy can get it fairly cheaply. But I also went to the library, and I can't say I read every volume, but for those who don't know, the entire Warren Commission report is like Encyclopedia Britannica. The screen's not big enough here for me to show how much library shelf that is. And I spent some time with that. And by the time I had gotten, just into a few hundred pages, and I had no bias, I went in about a couple hundred pages and I went, holy goodness, this government report is full of crap, to use the French term. I was
What?
stunned. I was stunned. The Warren Commission report itself, if you read it, is self-contradictory. And that's when I got the motivation to write the book. And then somewhere I noticed, oh, this is coming up on the 50th anniversary. So that was a nice tie-in with the title. Okay, that was a long answer, Matt. I hope you're with
Hey,
me.
there's no time limit. You are fine. You're
Well,
fine.
our viewers might get bored if I digress, so don't let me digress.
My last video was 5 hours, so and so it took you, said, about a year and a half for you to write this, or
Like I say, a year of actual writing, but then
yeah.
off and on sometime before, years before that, of just reading about the topic. So I read quite a bit before I ever officially put pen to paper.
I like what you
But
said. I love what you said about how, you were reading it and you were like, this does not make sense. And that really goes with the old quote that a first generation researcher Penn Jones said. He said the only way you can believe the Warren report is to not read it. And
that's good. I
okay,
like that. And that's exactly it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what was the first thing you found wrong with it?
The thing, I don't know if it was the first, but the thing that struck me, kind of like hit me the loudest, the hardest, were the descriptions of the wounds on President Kennedy's head. And
Mhm.
it was whole body, but head in particular. And that's where there's that self contradiction right in the report, where many of the doctors, some of the doctors who treated Kennedy at Parkland Hospital, were not interviewed by the Warren Commission. They were not put into print, but a lot of them were. And so, in other words, they filtered out some. They really didn't like what the doctor said, so they cut them out completely. But even those that they did include, some of them go along with the party line of, well, maybe it was just a couple of shots from the school book depository behind Kennedy. But most of the doctors said things that there's no other conclusion to think that there were multiple shots, and B, that big portions of Kennedy's skull and brain were blown out. And that just comes through loud and clear. And these weren't just, these weren't just bystanders, witnesses. These were medically trained professionals, the nurses and the attendants, others as well, and then of course the autopsists. Not as much of that in the Warren Commission summary, kind of hide some of that too. But anyway, when you read what the professionals say in the Warren Commission report, you can't make it fit. It just goes like, wow. That's even before you get to the crazy magic bullet theory and all that stuff, the trajectories of the bullets. That's a little more, that's a little more complex. It takes a little more. You have to break out the protractor and the laser sights and all that stuff. But of course, it doesn't add up either. But just on its face, so much of what the doctor said alone was enough for me to go, the government's not telling us the truth. And so then you start digging deeper and you find out you turn over every stone, and under every stone there's a snake, So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now you did something very. You mentioned the single bullet theory there. You did something. You took a unique approach to it in regards to a famous photograph by.
There we go. Yes, starting with that picture, because there's several famous photos, but yes.
You had a unique approach to this photo. Now, this is a photo that everyone's seen. This was taken about frame 160 of the Zapruder film. So really about, 30 frames before he's hit in the back.
Another way to put it, not moments before the shooting, but a moment before the shooting, right?
Yeah, well, literally about a second, the second.
Yeah, right, or less. Anyway, hard to say exactly, but yes.
You see the Texas depository here, and this is Kennedy and Connolly, and this is a photo that I feel everyone knows, but they don't really pay attention to it. But
right.
But in your book, you took a unique approach to it, and why don't you tell us what you did there?
Well, there's a couple of things in this photo that are important, most of which is the posture of Kennedy. They talk in the Warren Commission report about his coat. I want to like point his coat being. I point on myself. His coat being bunched up in the back, which it was a little bit, but maybe you see it at the same time. Well, it's maybe an inch on the neckline, possibly. The shoulders are fitting pretty snug. So the reason they make a deal of that in the Warren report is they're trying to place the bullet higher than it really was. And so you got this hole in the suit coat that they use to try to line up. And it really, first of all, this picture shows that his suit wasn't that much off kilter. But second of all, it's silly because it's the shirt that was clinging to his sweaty body that actually shows the bullet hole more accurately. So to me, the coat's kind of irrelevant. And those holes don't line up. But that leads to, which I think is what you want me to point out, that seeing the posture, and then when you pull back, when you zoom back, you can see the buildings, and you can line them up with a plumb line. And for those who aren't into the construction trades, a plumb line is one of the simplest tools of builders, brick masons. It goes all the way back to the builders of the pyramids. You just hang a lead weight on a string, hang it down, and gravity pulls that straight into a 90-degree angle. So if you have gravity giving you an exact 90-degree angle, and then you line that plumb line up with the building in a photograph, and then you pull it over to line it up with Kennedy, you take out a lot of the excuses that the Warren Commission makes for, oh well, the angles were wrong because of the coat, but the angles were wrong also because the road was slanted and this was angled here and that was angled there, and you can't figure out exactly how he was sitting in the car and all. With the plumb line lined up with the building, you know exactly where 90 degrees is. And so therefore you line that up with Kennedy, you find out actually Kennedy is sitting pretty dang straight to gravity. He's not
Pretty much.
hunched over terribly, which is funny, because if you look in some of the diagrams, they do these exaggerated hunched over things, trying so hard to make his body line up with the whoever the gunman is. They claim Lee Harvey Oswald, up in the Texas School Book Depository, because they're locked into a certain window there that their witness saw somebody, so
Yeah.
they can't move that. They've got holes going through Kennedy, through his suit, through his shirt, and then they've got holes going through Connolly that they want to all line up because they want to say basically, a couple of bullets did all this damage. And so when you back up to a building that was built with a plumb line, because that's how they build buildings, uh, that doesn't lie. Don't talk to me about the angle of the street or what angle the car was or any of that stuff, because we've got a dead reference here. No pun intended. We've got a clear base point to see how Kennedy is configured in the car compared to the building. Doesn't matter what the street's doing, up or down. The street slants, but so what? It's where he's sitting in relation to the building. You can almost see it in this one. If you just draw a line down, the back of his head is almost lined up perfect. There you go.
And for those
Yeah.
wondering, here,
Yeah, you can see it, and yeah,
right
and you can see in
there.
other pictures. Yeah, you draw a line. You can take a ruler and stick on there, bring it down, and you can see
Yeah.
exactly how straight overall. Considering he wore a back brace and he's in a car on a slanted street, he really is pretty close to straight up with the plumb line. I'm not saying exactly, but it doesn't have to be exact. It just shows what a lie it is when these other debunkers have taken computer programs and lasers, and they use high tech to try to claim that we can show with these computers and these lasers how the bullet could have worked. And no, you can tell a computer and a laser to do anything, because it's just about what you input,
Yeah.
But you can't change a building that was built to a plumb line. That's
Yeah.
concrete in the literal term of bricks and concrete. They didn't build that building crooked. They built it on a plumb line. So anyway, I went on and on about that. But is that kind of one of the things you were
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think
getting at?
I was listening to the audiobook in my car earlier today, a little kind of refreshing myself a little.
Good.
I really like I really liked how you said, why go through the effort of animation and laser stuff when we have the photographs right in front of us.
With buildings
Yeah.
for references.
And
Yeah.
I was like, darn, that's a really good point. And and honestly, that's what I really like about this book. As author Vince Palomera wrote on the back of the book, quote, finally a well-written, witty, and factual overview of the case. Highly recommended. And that's the thing that I want to tell my audience that's a little different about this book. Honestly, if I was stuck on a desert island, and I had to pick one Kennedy book, I mean, or recommend
Hopefully
if I had
it's
to
a hopefully it's a fun read, despite the topic
that
being
that's the thing.
serious.
If I had to recommend one Kennedy book for a desert island, I was thinking about this morning. I think I would have to go with your book because
Uh,
it's a fun read. It's not just, oh, this is this and this is this. It really it has a nice energy to it. So I wanted to plug
well,
it.
that's a kind compliment, and in fact, let's also point out that Vince Palomera, who is author of several books on the topic, the Survivor's Guilt was I think his bestseller. That's a very strong compliment that he gave me as well, and so I'm always indebted to Vince for that. But you also reminded me that if you look on the back cover of the book,
Yeah.
which I had an extra copy here, I have a picture of the shirt. If I get that framed up, it what I was saying a minute ago about forget about the coat being bunched up. The bullet went through the coat, but it also went through the shirt, and you can see. And I've
Yeah.
drawn a blue arrow on the book cover. You can see where the bullet hole is, and that is it. but yet it doesn't line up with what the Warren Commission needs to claim when they draw their little diagrams to prove the fictitious magic bullet theory. So that was so important that I put it on the back of the book. So yeah,
Exactly. And that's a very good point. How even though the jacket, as you said, can bunch a little bit, the shirt's gonna stay down there because the shirt does not rise.
yeah, yeah. You tuck your shirt, dress a man like Kennedy, tucked his shirt in tight. We know it's a sweaty day, and I've worn coats and dress shirts in the outdoors of Texas before, and your shirt isn't going to move much. It's stuck to the body. So that I count that bullet hole through the shirt being pretty close to where it had to be, and it simply doesn't line up. Anyway.
Absolutely. Now, I remember reading a fantastic quote that really sums up in one, paragraph why the single bullet theory can't work. And it's a quote that by FBI agent James Cybert, who was present at the autopsy, who was not an advocate.
Right.
Theory.
Right.
And you put an amazing quote from him, which really nails down, just like I said, in one paragraph, why it cannot happen. I actually found the video clip of him actually saying.
There he is. You did surprise me. That's wonderful. There he is, Agent Cybert. Yes.
It's one thing to read it, but I would want it so here it is right here.
Awesome.
Yes, I was going to ask you to tell me your thoughts on Mr. Spector and the single bullet theory.
Well, I just, that single bullet theory, I mean, when they subpoenaed it, they didn't subpoena me, they had me come up for this deposition there at College Park. I said, well, before I come up there, I said, I want you to know one thing. I said, I'm not an advocate of the single bullet theory. I said, I don't believe it, because I stood there 2 foot from where that bullet wound was in the back, the one that they eventually moved up to the base of the neck. And I said I was there when Boswell made his face sheet and located that wound exactly as we described it in our FD 302. And I said, furthermore, when they examined the clothing after it got into the bureau, those bullet holes in the shirt and the coat were down 5 1/3 inches there. So there's no way that bullet could have go that low, then come up, raise up and come out the front of the neck, zigzag and hit Connolly, and then end up in a pristine position on a stretcher over there in Dallas. I said, so that's why
I think he realizes he went a little too far.
So that's why
He's like,
I'm in trouble now. I said it.
Hold on, yeah.
There goes my FBI pension.
So you don't believe in the single bullet theory, period?
there's no way I'll swallow that. They can't put enough sugar on it for me to bite that. That bullet was too low in the back.
That's excellent.
Too low in the back.
Well, it was too low in the back. I remember reading it. For some reason, I had glossed over it during whenever I first saw that DVD that he was on, and I read it for the first time in here, and I was like, darn, that's such a good quote. And then I found it, so I wanted to surprise you with it.
I'm so glad you did. That's wonderful. And so for your viewers to remember, this is an FBI agent who was privy to the autopsy, if I remember correctly, at some level. And it's rare when we can find a government official who hasn't been frightened by any number of threats, including you want to lose your pension for life, keep talking, we know that's happened. There's people on the record who've said that they were pressured to keep their mouth shut. So it's really good to have that on record. I'm glad you got it there. That's super.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to surprise you.
Yeah, and it confirms what we were just talking about. So perfect. Yes.
To me, that sums up the entire thing. If I could throw out everything about the single bullet theory and just have one thing, I think that would be it. Now, one more thing, just before we move on, some low nutters like to, pull fast ones and do something like this.
Right. That's what
Right
I was
here.
referring to. Uh-huh.
You see this right here? How they tried to
Yeah, they're trying to connect
hold on one second. Hold
the
on.
bullet from his neck to Connolly, but then they don't connect his neck to the hole down his shirt that we just talked about, even though they're claiming it's the same bullet. I don't believe it was the same bullet, but that's what they have to claim to make it work. So obviously, where that's coming is nowhere near where that hole in the shirt is, not even close. So the angles are all off. They're just all off. You can't make it work, but they try to.
Exactly. And this is something. This right here is more indicative. This one right here is from Robert Groden's book, and I think this one is a little better. Can you see it?
Well, obviously, Groden's done great work.
You see how low it really was right here. Do you see it right here?
That's closer to real life, and bullets just don't operate that way. Not when there is no indication that it hit any kind of bone to deflect or turn. On top of that, if it had hit bone and deflected, then it would have been slowed more, and because it's still, remember, it's the magic bullet still has to go through Conley, come out of Conley, go into his wrist, bounce around, and then go into his leg and hit the bone there, and then come out this pristine bullet. It's just there are so many absurdities at every level. I can almost, like, it's like going down a rabbit hole. I can get confused about which part of the nonsense should I emphasize. They're all nonsensical points, but the debunkers keep trying. I think it's astounding that when you find people who have really dug in, like you, Matt, have really dug into this and done the research and looked at actual documents. We're not basing this on some wild rumor or whatever. Actual government documents. The more people read about it, the more they just throw their hands up and go, of course he wasn't killed by one lone nut up in the way up on the top of the schoolbook depository. And then it just goes from there to the point where those who are in the know and who are honest, who don't have some agenda, like Gerald Posner is a debunker who has an agenda. He was trying to debunk it, and that was the point of his book that he was making a lot of money off of, because it was through a traditional publisher. But once you look at people who have honestly engaged the material, they're not like people at the periphery who go, well, I guess maybe there was some kind of conspiracy, and I guess we'll just never know. No, actually, we do know. We really do know. I was screaming from the mountaintops. Rational, intelligent people with PhDs in a variety of things, from Cyril Wecht, who's a forensic expert, David Mantic, an X-ray physicist. I mean, we just go down the list. Medical personnel. We just want to scream. Yes, we know there was not only a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, but a government cover-up, which is why it's irrelevant whether the mafia was involved or not. They clearly didn't do it alone if they were even involved, because only who could do the cover-up? Only the U.S. government. Am I right? Of course.
Exactly. Now, have you seen? Do you remember? Have you seen a documentary called "Conspiracy Theorists Lie"?
Yes, I've seen.
I've seen. Where I'm going with this?
I know, but I've seen several, and I saw one recently that stole the title to my book. But you go, and I'll tell you about that.
Really?
But go ahead and finish your thought.
Now, this is a documentary. Do you remember? So you of course were in Dealey Plaza for the 50th anniversary 11 years ago.
Yep. My wife and I were there, and I believe my beautiful face is on that in that documentary.
Have you seen it before?
I have, yes.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, but go ahead. It's been years since I've looked at it.
Did you?
Here we go.
You're like, what the heck is this? Now, first of all, for those listening, for context, for those listening, there
Yes,
was
yes.
a lone nutter. His name was, no one really knows about him. His name is James K. Lambert. He kind of does his own things, and he was passing out. Do you
Yep.
still have yours?
I still have mine. I should have brought it out. I got it back here in the closet. Yes.
He did something unique. He was passing out these kind of little come to Jesus
Yes.
little
Right.
little booklets to people, and one of the people he came by was you.
Because it was the
And
50th anniversary.
so this is, so I remember seeing this and I was like, oh my gosh, because I was reading your book at the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
What the hell is this crap?
That's me. And my wife, my lovely wife.
Why? America is not a fascist state. Oh, yes, it is. Here you go. Put this on there. 50 years, 50 lies. That's the truth. The media's covered this up.
Plugging my book, sorry.
I just had to bring that up. I just had to bring that up.
Thank you. It is a little embarrassing that obviously I was there to plug my book, and I had no idea who this guy was or what he was up to. But when he handed out the pamphlet, I glanced at it. I saw immediately that it was just literally full of lies, and I think I let an expletive out of my mouth and on camera, but he deserved it. And there's a funny couple things to that day, but that we could talk about. But one funny thing is that, I'm not famous, but because of being in that video for 3 minutes, he put me on his cast list. I kind of appreciate it. So I'm in the film record of IMDb, the online record of movies and actors and stuff. So if you search for me in IMDb, I think that's the name of it, right, where they have all the movies recorded.
Yeah.
I'm in there because of this gentleman on screen right now on the left there, or my left. So he made me famous, quote. But yeah, his video was not his little documentary was not the least bit convincing, and I didn't even take it serious enough to really engage him at any more than a silly level of cussing his work, saying, "What is this crap?" Yeah. But anyway, can I tell you about that day real quick, since we're just kind of rambling all over the place?
Sure, go.
My wife and I were there promoting the book, and we learned that Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent that famously jumped on the back of the president's limousine, kind of saved Jackie from falling off the limousine and pushed her back in the seat. He is the most famous Secret Service agent involved in the case. He was there that day signing his own book. And he was doing that inside the school book depository, a little irony there. And we learned he was there. And so we wanted to get to speak to him, and we had a little video camera and to question him. So we waited for him to get finished, and when he was heading out of the book depository to his limousine to go to the airport, I guess, he's a Secret Service agent, but he had a couple of bodyguards protecting him from conspiracy nuts like me. Now, me and my wife and I were just calmly, nicely asking if we could ask a few questions. His bodyguard grabbed me by the neck and started choking me. And I'm still angry at my wife to this day. She was so focused with the camera on Clint Hill because, he's Clint Hill. He's a celebrity, and was trying to talk to him.
Yeah.
She didn't get a picture of Clint Hill's bodyguard literally choking me. And I have that video, and you can hear me sort of screaming, "Film this, he's choking me." I could have sued him, and I could have gotten some good press out of it. But that's how insane this whole thing is. So that was a crazy day. So yes, I literally got attacked by Clint Hill's bodyguard.
That's
on
insane.
the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, outside of the school book depository.
That's insane. That's insane. He unfortunately he's never been asked the right questions. Unfortunately, no researcher has been able to sit down with him and really ask him the important questions that he should have been asked years ago.
Well,
You know what I mean?
let's remember people, remind people that that's one of the things in the Warren Commission report. He is in the Warren Commission report. He did make a statement there, and he said, it's in black and white in the government records, that he saw a fist-sized hole in the back of Kennedy's head.
Yep.
Fist size, you can't, that's pretty memorable. And he was the closest person to it, short of the doctors. He was right there looking down on Kennedy's open skull, fist-sized hole, back of the head. And yet there's an autopsy photo, the official, quote, government autopsy photo, that shows just a tiny, about the size of the tip of your finger hole in the back of his head. So in that particular case, Clint Hill was speaking the truth, because what Clint Hill said was also exactly what 90% of the doctors said, that it was a gaping hole in the back of his head. And yet the government puts out a picture showing almost no damage to the back of his head. So once again, who's lying?
Yeah. So unfortunately, he's never been asked the right question. I don't, almost all of the witnesses all the doctors and nurses, people from the autopsy, have all been shown that picture, and they said, no, that's not what we saw. Unfortunately, he's the only witness who's never been shown that photo. He had the best view of it, so that's really unfortunate that he has never been shown that, or at least the tracing of it that was published.
Right. I think it was a sketch. Yes.
Yeah. So
but he is on the record. That's a sworn statement in the Warren Commission report.
And even in his books, even on his book tour, he says to this day, he even though he claims he says, or he believes there was no conspiracy, he always says, that he saw this big wound in the back of the head. So it's there, and it will always be there. I want to finish this little segment up.
Killing Kennedy, 50 years, 50 lies. You got it on camera this time? Yeah.
So, who do you think did it?
That was the government's job to find out who did it. But I'll tell you who didn't do it. Lee Harvey Oswald did not do it. There's so many God's green earth.
So why do you think that the Warren Commission didn't tell you the truth?
Because they're protecting the establishment, of course.
And who's the establishment?
In this case, it was Lyndon Johnson, the defense industry, the CIA. They all had a vested interest.
And they're all dead. So why is it still going on?
That's what I want to know, why the media still wants to cover it up.
No, why?
2 people resigned from the House Committee on Assassinations because they saw it was also a whitewash. The record's clear on this.
No, you cherry pick the facts you want to pick.
It's not cherry picked.
Sure
There's 50 facts in here.
Cherry picked.
Cherry picked 50. Yeah, cherry picked where you find one cherry out of a field. But this is 50 lies. 50 lies.
50 lies. I'm sure you've got
by the media, and 50 truths that are footnoted.
I just had to get your reaction.
He pushed me to I knew I only had seconds to be able to get my point across, so I had to come across a little bit like the nutcake that he wanted me to be. But what nonsense that I'm cherry picking. I actually had to take the 1,000 lies and the thousands of documents and cherry pick them down to 50, but they all say the same thing, which is there was a conspiracy. So yeah, the word cherry pick really was some nonsense.
And then you point out how there are 50 documented lies in here, and he spins it. He's like, yeah, 50 lies. Like you're telling 50 lies. It's like,
and that's why I was trying to convey. I have sources. It's cited. There's actually 100, and it wasn't 50. I have I think that book. Well, it's right here. Was several hundred footnotes.
Yeah.
It's a couple hundred.
Yeah.
actually, we like to keep the record straight. It is 203 footnotes, and half of those footnotes are from actual government records, not
Yeah.
from, my aunt told me this, that her second cousin heard on the street. These are documents.
I like how you brought up in here, unlike Bill O'Reilly's book, which doesn't have a single footnote. I think you're about to say that right here.
Bam.
Unlike Bill O'Reilly's book, where there's not a single footnote in Bill O'Reilly's book.
Like nobody
So
can
who's
make a
lying?
footnote.
So who's lying?
Nobody can make a footnote.
Footnotes that correspond to legitimate sources, yes. But O'Reilly doesn't bother to have even one. Yes, I wrote this book. What a coincidence.
What a coincidence.
Well, who wrote this? Who wrote this?
I did.
And
So-
why? Who motivated you?
The truth.
Somebody's paying you. I don't know who it is, but they're
Somebody's
paying you.
paying me. See, you automatically go that there must be some deeper level. You automatically think of these conspiracy stuff.
Because the truth is obvious to anybody
I couldn't
who'll read.
choose to do something by
Anybody
myself.
that will read this stuff and has intelligence knows the truth.
I couldn't choose to do something by myself. You automatically have to go to a conspiracy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'd had enough of him by then.
I know.
Yeah, because he had nothing. He had nothing.
I
But
know,
yeah,
I
once
know.
you would think that once I say, okay, my book's got 200 footnotes, legitimate footnotes.
Yeah.
And by contrast, Bill O'Reilly, who has the more famous book at that point in time, had not a single, there it is, not a single footnote. And yet he wants to say that I'm the nut,
I
that
know,
I'm
exactly.
the,
You're a minister, right?
yes, I am an
There is
ordained United Methodist minister.
One of my favorite proverbs is Proverbs 29, which says, quote, if a wise man has an argument with a fool, the fool only rages and laughs, and there is no quiet. So
Sorry, I was laughing, so I guess I'm a fool too. But
no, he's the fool. I'm talking about him. I'm talking about
I
him.
got it. But I just thought it was
There's
funny
no-
that quote
no-
made me laugh, even though it's saying the fool.
I always try to stoic. Just what would Jesus do? He would not. Don't cast pearls before swine. But yeah, that's a whole other. It's
we could have a whole nother day's lesson. But.
Yeah. Now, you have a very good video that you did that you put out. Two very good videos that you did. One has about 400,000 views. Is that correct?
I had to check that recently. So, and I haven't looked at it in a long time, but I checked it recently, and it's 440,000 views on YouTube with vast majority of positive thumbs up. So that's always nice to see. But that's a 10-year-old video, and it's not the most polished, beautiful piece of cinema in the world, but it gets the point across, we hope.
I'll put a little link at the bottom right here so people can go to it.
Well, super. And I got to link you up before too long. I've got to after this interview, I'll get your contact info on some of my pages because I want people to find you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now, are you going to update the book and call it 60 Years, 60 Lies and add some stuff that you have not, that you know now that you didn't know then? And
well,
also, what are those? And also, what have you learned since?
Yes, I really should. As I've said to others, with 9 books and one I've just finished called Cults on Trial. Since we're busy plugging, since it's already been exposed as a book plugger. This is my latest book, Cults on Trial. And it's an expose on what are the traits and tactics of cult leaders across the last 100 years, basically. But that's off topic. The point is how that relates to your question, in that I've been so busy with that, I didn't have time with the 60th anniversary coming this past November to update my book. It would have been smart to update it because there have been more documents released by the government, many of them redacted, but nevertheless, enough information has come out that it would be worthy of an update. And also, I just haven't had time to do it, is the punchline there. But also, yes, as a known writer on the topic, I've now had people contact me and given me more information than I had when I wrote the book. So I have a couple of anecdotes I can share with you when
Sure.
you're ready.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So what have you learned since about the Kennedy assassination that did not, that could not, that
Or at least wasn't fully in that book, right?
yes. What have you learned since?
Well, one thing of several. One thing would be about the the nexus of New Orleans. I don't live that far from New Orleans, and I've visited regularly, and I've gone to the places where Lee Harvey Oswald worked. He worked in a coffee factory and not far from the French Quarter. And some of this was detailed in the Oliver Stone movie JFK, and that part is absolutely true. That he worked in this coffee company, and right around the corner was an FBI former naval intelligence guy named Guy Bannister, famously, and I mean just walking distance from the coffee factory. And Oswald was known to be at both places. So there's this nexus in New Orleans of Oswald, of anti-Cuban and pro-Cuban rebels. There's Guy Bannister of the FBI, and then there's famously David Ferrie, who was a CIA pilot, and that's been proven. And it is that nexus that I got pulled into with two people who don't know each other, who reached out and contacted me. So one was the daughter of one of the executives of the coffee factory in New Orleans. And she brought it to my attention that her father knew Oswald peripherally, had met him, but that he also knew David Ferrie, and that Oswald and Ferrie knew each other. David Ferrie flew for the CIA, but he also was a pilot for Eastern Airlines. And strangely enough, it was on a commercial air flight that this lady who contacted me, her name is Terry Robert, not Roberts, but Robert. She's the daughter of Jules Charles Robert, who had been Oswald's boss at the Riley, not O'Reilly, but the Riley coffee factory, okay, in New Orleans. She read my JFK book like you did. She contacted me to let me know that not only was there this nexus, but that sadly, not very long after the assassination, when it started becoming known that there were funny things about Oswald, and people started investigating. Well, the Attorney General in New Orleans started investigating that some witnesses had to start dying. And her father, Jules Charles Robert, got on a plane, commercial flight. There were only about 50 people. It was an abnormally small number of passengers, and was flying over Lake Pontchartrain when the plane crashed, is the official story. But as she shared with me, and then I confirmed in other documentation, the plane did not crash. The plane, according to eyewitnesses, exploded in a ball of light. Only, this is gruesome, but only pieces of bodies were recovered, and only pieces of the plane. If you crash into Lake Pontchartrain, and it's shallow water, about 20 feet at most, where it crashed. You crash into about 20 feet of water. It's not like you're out in the Atlantic Ocean somewhere. It's fairly easy recovery, you know. But instead of finding this plane that had some supposedly mechanical failure and just crashed in the water, it's a plane that was in pieces. So obviously a bomb went off, killed her father, and she's convinced of that. And she contacted me to encourage my work, and to tell me that we can add Mr. Roberts' name to the list of over 100 people that have mysteriously died. Some you could say, well, they died of normal causes like a heart attack or whatever, and some you could say were only peripherally involved. But the striking thing about this topic of mystery deaths is how many absolutely key witnesses, people who had some scoop, they had some inside knowledge, died, if not within a year of the assassination. Some of them were within a year, within the period where it began to be a controversy, where Mark Lane's book came out. People began to question, there's something fishy with this. And then you've got these other investigations eventually leading up into the 70s with the House Select Committee on Assassination. Though the more the investigations unfolded, the more people started dying. And so she contacted me about it. Now here's the rest of that story. In one of Life is About Coincidences, and one of those strange coincidences, I also, about the same time, but within a few months of Terry Robert contacting me about her father, she thinks being killed on the commercial flight. A fellow that I went to high school with, hadn't stayed in close contact, liked him, but he joined the military, in fact, and become an officer in the military, moved off to the East Coast somewhere. But he had stumbled on my book and told his wife, "Hey, I know this guy. I went to high school with him." And he contacted me, and in fact, we had a phone conversation, but also he wrote it in a letter. His father was an Eastern airline pilot who flew with David Ferrie, and his father was based in New Orleans, and his father knew David Ferrie enough that David Ferrie invited him to some parties where at least one of them, Lee Harvey Oswald, was attending. Now, these are associations that early on people like Gerald Posner and other debunkers claimed, oh, there's no evidence for that Oswald knew David Ferrie, even though then later we found a picture, not we, but the actual government found a picture of David Ferrie in a guerrilla training outpost in St. Tammany Parish outside of New Orleans with young Lee Harvey Oswald. Mm-hmm. And they're my friend that I went to high school with. His father was a pilot who flew with Ferrie, and these are both serious military men. They don't lie. They're military men. They're about truth and honor. And in fact, on top of that, he said that two of his friends who were also pilots, who were also in that nexus of New Orleans and connected to Ferrie, and thus we can guess possibly knew Oswald as well. One of them mysteriously died. How? In a plane crash in Mexico. And another one didn't die, but quit working for Eastern and went kind of underground in Atlanta because he was afraid for his life. So these are people that my friend found out about only when he was older, when his father said, well, you're old enough now, I can tell you these things. I don't want to scare you. When you were a little kid and this stuff was hitting the news, and Lee Oswald came on the TV, I wanted to say, I know that guy, but he didn't want to scare his son. But when he got older, his father very seriously and soberly told him, here's the truth. There is a conspiracy. I met these guys. They knew each other, and the government was denying it. So it's a funny coincidence, but I'll swear on the Bible. In fact, my friend even said he's happy to go on the record, and I have his letter somewhere around here anyway.
That's all. And everything he just told me is
all exclusive to Matt. This is exclusive Matt content right here. Wow,
I really.
It's not in my book because again, both of these things came out after the book because these people reached out to me having seen the book. So yes, you have an exclusive on that.
Well, I really appreciate it.
More about so it's the exclusive about more proof of the New Orleans nexus, more proof of the Oswald David Ferrie connections, more proof of the mystery deaths. And by the way, David Ferrie also had a timely death. When that story. So yeah. You talk. I'm talked out. Tell me something.
No, you're fine. No, I'm listening. This is well. You have to update the book now.
Maybe when I retire from my day job, I can do that. Okay.
You can't knock it out in the weekend.
Some of the updates I do have already written down, so maybe it wouldn't be that much work to update. But
That's really incredible. And I had no idea he was going to say this. This is
yeah, we didn't have this plan, but
no, we did not have this
yeah.
plan. That's amazing. Thank you very much. What is your favorite book on the Kennedy assassination?
Wow, that's a tough one. You mentioned Groden. I like Groden's work. I like some of the classics. Mars.
Mhm.
The work on the medical stuff intrigued me because I know enough. My wife's a nurse. My brother's a physicist. I know enough about science and medicine to be conversant in it. I don't. By the way, the old joke is I have a doctoral degree, but as my mother said, yes, my son's a doctor, but not the kind that helps people. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm smart enough and have enough education to be able to read and know when someone's stating, science fact versus science fiction. And I say smart enough. It doesn't take a.
Which book
It
was
doesn't.
that?
Yeah. The most recently, Dr. David Mantic is one who's done that, and I don't have it in front of me to remember book titles. I apologize. And in fact, I should have gone to my bookshelf, which is in another room.
Is it the new one from this year with Jerome Corsi about the X-rays?
Right,
Yeah.
that one, and it'd be easy. All someone has to do is go on Amazon and look.
I have not yet.
Dr. Mantic. It's Mantik, I believe. And then, but yeah, I have two bookshelves full of Kennedy books. So you put me on the spot. I should have taken a picture and then I could read them. But they're in the other room. Sorry. But there's a lot. There are a lot of good books, and there's some that are sloppy and not put together well, and there's some that are just outright full of lies in order to establish some agenda that somebody has. Anyway, yeah.
It's really depressing trying to keep up with all of the propaganda that's out there. And let me share my screen again right here. Here's just one example, and you quoted this in your book. Here's
there he is.
There he is. Yeah,
Gerald Posner.
Gerald Posner. And this is something that you quoted this part in your book, and here's the video clip of it. I think this is probably one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard.
Hey,
I can look at their original.
He's talking about.
I wanted to add. Let's be clear to the viewers who might be new to this topic that the folks like Gerald Posner and the official government stand is that Oswald was just a lone nut, just one person out in the wilderness who happened to be at the right place at the wrong time with a gun and shot Kennedy, even though there's 1,000 reasons why that's not true. We are called lone nutters because we're called conspiracy nuts, but they are the true lone nutters because they're the ones saying there was a lone nut involved. Anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
So you quoted this part in your book, and here's the video of it. And I just think this is one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard. So here he's talking about the witnesses in Dealey Plaza who saw smoke coming from a gun on the grassy knoll.
Right.
Went back and looked at their original testimony. None of them say there was smoke from a gun fired on the grassy knoll. They say instead they saw some smoke from the exhaust of a police motorcycle that pulled over there immediately after the assassination, which is visible on the film.
Absolute lie. An
I went back and looked at their original.
I know. I mean, wow.
He's got some nerve. That's an absolute lie. It's in the warrant. This goes back to your original question to me.
Yeah.
It's in the Warren Commission government documents that people are sworn testimony on the Bible, in court or the equivalent court, giving sworn testimony.
This is the stuff we have to put up. This is the kind of stuff we have to combat with and put up with. And this is what I wrote when I posted this. These goofball lone nutters had no idea a little thing called the internet would come along, and that we could fact check and debunk them in seconds. So
excellent. That's a great post. I didn't see that post, Matt. That's wonderful. Yes, exactly. in a strange world that we live in, um, Gerald Posner was accused. I don't know how far it went, but he was got tangled up in a lawsuit with Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird,
I read that in your book.
a plagiarism thing, which I had to put in there because I was her pastor. You asked me if I'm a pastor. A minute ago I said I'm not famous. I'm not, but the one claim to fame I have is that I was Harper Lee's pastor for 6 years as a Methodist pastor, and of all the people, all the wonderfully good-hearted people in the world to try to rip off her, says all we need to know about Posner. But anyway,
yeah, he was gone for a good while, but now he's back, unfortunately. So,
somebody paid him to write his book for the sole purpose of trying to reclaim the consciousness of Americans, because polls, at the time his book came out, polls were showing like 70 to 80% of Americans believe there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy. And they just couldn't have that. So somebody paid him to put a book out. And
unfortunately, that has kind of stuck, because 10 years ago, it dropped down to like 60%. So it's like, the propaganda is still kind of working. So
now I don't even trust those polls, because I think polls are corrupted.
I don't think
they weren't. I think originally polls were pretty. Here's the point on that: when we all had land phones, polls had a reasonable chance statistically. There was a science to it, and it was polls were pretty. They were pretty solid. But now, who's answering phone polls? Not too many people. So.
Has anyone ever walked up to you on the street, holding a clipboard and being like, "Hey, who are you?"
Never.
Your thought exactly. It's like,
and they've never called me. I've never been called for a poll.
And even if they did, I'd be like, none of your business,
Yeah, I'm busy. Leave me alone. So enough about polls. But the point remains. Also with the movie JFK, when the movie JFK came out, well, first it was Mark Lane's book that opened the floodgates of doubt, but it just one book after another. And so it was almost inevitable that the establishment would have, I don't like the word deep state, because that they're really great. Let's be clear. There are some really great public servants, patriots, who work in government, who work in our intelligence agencies, who save the world. They're great people. We can't just paint a black brush on all of them. They're all in this Illuminati conspiracy. We can't do that. That's not fair to people who are giving their lives to protect us. But there's a segment of the government that is entrenched, that wants us to never know that they actually killed our elected president, and that they lied to cover it up, and what's even in a way worse, killed innocent people to cover up that fact. And that goes back to the mystery deaths, the witnesses that have been killed. Yikes.
Exactly. It's kind of interesting. It's like, a 9/11, everyone agrees that was a conspiracy. Lincoln assassination, everyone agrees that was a conspiracy. Watergate, it just goes on, and this and this and that. And it's like, Kennedy,
just a lone nut, just a slow nut.
A lone nut. But and like you said, I think people forget, the official story originally was, he's nobody, lone nut, redneck, nobody. And then over the years, okay, well, yeah, maybe he was connected to this person. Oh, yeah, he did know David Ferry. Yeah, the KGB were interested in him. Yeah, this and this and this and that. And
but don't look behind. But don't look behind the curtain. Don't look behind that curtain. That's that Wizard of Oz guy. He's just don't look at him.
And like I always say, when push comes to shove, they'll eventually say, "Yeah, you got a good point, but he still did it."
By the way, that brought to mind. What you would ask, one of the things that really just stood out to me as proof of what you and I believe is that phrase, lone nut Oswald. Here's what the government is asking us to believe, and this is confirmed by audio tapes with Hoover, FBI Director Hoover, and Lyndon Johnson on tape. We now know this is what they are having to have us swallow. That a stranger, an unknown person, some weeks before the assassination, went to Mexico, got on a CIA camera going into the embassy there, portraying himself to be Oswald. And we have a picture and we have tape showing that he was not Oswald. He was not Oswald. We know there's no argument that Hoover even admits to LBJ. That's the biggest smoking gun in the whole thing. Hoover even admits, well, we got a little problem trying to figure out this guy down there in Mexico. I'm paraphrasing, but it's on one of my videos, as a matter of fact. And for those, again, who haven't followed this closely, do we understand how insane this is? I'm the government, and I'm going to tell you this. Oswald was a nobody. He was a lone nut. But yet somebody chose to impersonate this nobody all the way down to Mexico at a government facility, is going to lie, which would be a crime if not a felony.
Yeah.
And claim to be, I'm Oswald, but Oswald's not known to anybody. He's a nobody.
Yeah.
Why? So from our side, why would somebody do that? Because they were building a case. Because he wasn't a nobody. They knew exactly who Oswald was. Mm-hmm. They had been setting him up as a patsy, possibly for over a year. Sent him to Russia to pretend to be a defector. What records haven't been redacted from the CIA shows this very strong indication he was trying to play spy and be a spy in Russia. So they sent him over there. Probably told him, "You're doing the government a great service. You're infiltrating Russia," but it didn't really work out so well. So it comes back to the U.S. So then they want to tie him in with Cuban communists. They did that in the New Orleans nexus, and then on top of that, they're going to have an imposter go down to Mexico to the embassy to tie him in again to communists, because they want a scapegoat. They want a patsy, not only Oswald, but communism in general. And when in fact, it was kind of the opposite of communism. It was the right-wing fascist people like, golly, I'm tired, Matt. The head of the CIA, Dulles. Thank you. Dulles was anti-communist, but he's the one who set this up. So it's astounding that they want to sell this bill of goods today in 2024. They are still pushing this, that Oswald was just a nobody, a lone nut. It's astounding. See, I'm wordless, so I'm speechless. Help me out here, Matt. What's next?
No, you're fine. You're fine. You said you're tired or what?
I said I'm tired out because I talk too much.
You're good. You're good. Now, you in your book you have two chapters actually about Occam's razor. I want you to touch a little bit about that and the points that you made there about Occam's razor in the case.
The phrase about Occam's razor is sometimes oversimplified, and I admittedly use it in an oversimplification, but it's helpful. And that is, it's a principle that when you have something that's a mystery, whether it's a crime or whether it's a scientific principle that you're examining and trying to figure out, that usually the better answer is the simpler answer. It's the razor cuts to the core. You get right to it. That simplicity can be your guide in things. Now, it's almost a paradox using that in this case, because there is nothing simple about the assassination, and all that went with it in the cover-up. But I flip that and say that what the government wants us is trying to convince us of is the opposite of an Occam's razor principle. They have to come up with all these gerrymandered convolutions, gymnastic backbending to try to fit all the facts into their lone nut theory.
Yeah.
The classic example of that is indeed the magic bullet theory. It would have been much simpler to explain what happened at Dealey Plaza if you will allow there being 2 or more gunmen. Once you admit that, yeah, let's say there was a guy, whether it's Oswald or somebody else, let's say there's a guy in the Texas School Book Depository shooting down, but let's say there's also a guy on the famous grassy knoll shooting toward the front. All of a sudden, all the medical evidence, all of the eyewitnesses, all of the things that are argued about
Adds up.
are simple. They add up. It's simple. It's clear. Yes, he was hit in the back, and we know where he was hit in the back. This back of his skull was blown out because there was a bullet that came from the front about here and blew out the back, and there was also a bullet in his neck. So once you just set aside this silly notion that, oh, it was just this crazy guy that happened to work in the bookstore, who happened to have gone to Russia, and he was a communist sympathizer and he hated Kennedy. Oh, but wait, didn't we say that Kennedy was a little soft on communism? That doesn't fit. Oh, but anyway, back to the Occam's razor. It was just this, it's the opposite of Occam's razor, what they're trying to convince us of. Is that what you were asking?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Now, I focus a lot on the Tippit murder, which I feel gets overlooked a lot. And
Yeah.
it's very hard to find anything new on the Tippit case. But darn, you made a really good point in your book, that you said, quote, since no other patrol car was anywhere near Oswald's rooming house at that point in time, the odds that the police car that drove by Oswald's rooming house and beeped the horn while he was in his room changing his clothes and getting his revolver, you write, the odds seem very, very high that was Tippit's car. And just that one sentence, I was like, yeah.
Considering that every other police officer was looking for a killer somewhere in downtown, somewhere near Dealey Plaza.
I mean, it has to be Tippit's car. I mean, it's like hello, it's like it's right under our nose. It's like right under our noses, and it's like that one sentence in your book made me go like, duh.
Well, and I think in my book I hedge my bets because I don't have any hard evidence that Tippit was involved in any nefarious way. So I don't want to, I'm sure that his family would not appreciate if he died basically a martyr, whoever killed him, whichever side of the fence it was, somebody killed him. He's still a hero in my book. I don't want to go too far down that road, but the evidence and the witnesses around the Tippit killing are not as they are portrayed or dismissed by Posner in his book, where he just any witness that goes contrary to his scenario that it was Oswald who shot Tippit. There's several witnesses who say otherwise, but Posner just calls them not credible. Anybody that goes against the mainstream view is not credible, and anybody that can somehow be construed to be helpful to the government's case, they're credible. And they never provide any reason as to why this person's credible versus this one's not.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to what you said about the smoke on the grassy knoll. More than one person saw smoke on the grassy knoll and saw at least I think 2 people saw officers. Well, it's actually 3 saw an officer with a badge and a gun behind the grassy knoll. And in the Warren Commission report, they deny that there was any government or law enforcement officer behind there. So why would someone have seen what the government claims wasn't there, and why
Yeah,
were they
that's
there?
told. I think that's told very beautifully in the book. You've read the book JFK and the Unspeakable.
Yes, that's a
That
great book. It's not a
yeah,
light.
that's
That's not a light read. It's a thick book, but I've actually made contact with him, the author, because he's something of a theologian too, I believe.
yeah. He's a Catholic. But I think he lays out very well the unspeakable, the forces in the universe
Yes,
that press for death and destruction. So I think that's, and I really like how he told the important parts of the story. Like
yes, and the motivations for
yeah,
why they killed him, having to do with Vietnam and the military industrial complex and all of that. He did great work in that. But that would also be on my list of favorites, and that's in there in my bookshelf as well. Yes, it's good stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
JFK and the Unspeakable.
Here's the we actually have film footage. This is from Grodin's book. We actually have film footage. This is the Secret Service agent right here that the witnesses and the cops, Joe Marshall Smith, ran into. They described a guy in a suit, carrying a raincoat with a little submachine gun under his raincoat. And like you said, when everyone ran up there, he said, hey, I'm Secret Service. I'm holding the area
No, yeah,
secure.
and nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. And of course, that made sense until I figured out there were no Secret Service agents, and they were like, well, whoever that was bluffed you guys and got away. So, but Robert Grodin was going years ago, went through the films, the news films, and darn sure enough, here he is right here.
It's good work. I said Grodin did good work. He's
There, I mean,
in fact, one of the strengths of Grodin's work is marshaling photographic evidence of all kinds, including the medical side of the damage to Kennedy's body, but also these kind of photographs. It's great work. It's a great reference.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
I really wish we knew who this guy was right here. We don't know who he was.
Yeah, that's not something that I've investigated deeply enough. One thing that did strike me though is that I want to tie this into our theme for the day about mystery deaths. That one of the key witnesses that saw suspicious activity behind the grassy knoll fence was Lee Bowers.
Yep.
In fact, I had pulled this up. Lee Bowers was a rail yard worker who had the best view of the train yard and who saw not one but two men behind the knoll fence in a suspicious way. One driving in and kind of casing the place and doing fishy things, and then Lee Bowers ends up dead in a one-car accident
because he sneezed a little too hard, right? He had a sneezing fit, supposedly. I don't know. No.
That's maybe so. Yes. So the simple thing. Well, in fact, you mentioned I went out to Dealey Plaza at the 50th. If anyone goes out there, and if you go, and I guess they'll still let you do it. They let us go up. You go up behind the fence. It's still there on the grassy knoll, and you can see the X that they've placed as to where Kennedy was shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a gunman. I'm not a hunter. But I've shot a gun enough just because my relatives say, hey, here, take a shot. I could have shot him from the grassy knoll. It was that close. It was that close. The shot from 5 stories up in the school book depository would have taken a marksman. It's like how 5 times further, something like that at least. But when you get up behind the grassy knoll fence and you take a look and you see, I could have got here, I could have rested my gun on this fence as almost like a tripod, and he'd be right there.
Exactly.
I mean, jeepers. When you tie that with the fact that several credible witnesses, not one, not two, but several credible witnesses saw a person or persons with guns behind that fence at the time of the assassination, and unlike Posner lying, the Warren Commission report itself quotes a witness who said, "I saw a puff of smoke coming up from out from behind the fence or above the fence at the grassy knoll."
I think I think Mark Lane said it best when he was kind of saying, kind of like, I do believe that when 6, 7 people saw smoke on the knoll, when 50 plus people heard a shot come from there at the same time
Mm-hmm.
the president was hit. It's I think you can kind of infer that there was a shooter there. So, I think that's just a historical fact, and
It is. It's just overall. Sometimes we like you and I can get lost in the weeds with all of the thousands of documents and evidence, but some of it's common sense. My wife, for example, when the first time she saw a good quality version of the Zapruder film, where it had been remastered and was better quality, and she goes, and she's a nurse, and she knows, she's been in emergency rooms, she knows stuff. She goes, it's so obvious that at least one of the bullets struck him from the front and blew out the back of his head. It's obvious. And then, of course, the government went to all this stuff. They set a watermelon up on a ladder, a watermelon up on a ladder to show the jet effect of how it could go in the opposite direction. And I think I wrote this in my book, at least I thought it was, sorry, but a watermelon on a ladder is not remotely close to a human head on a body sitting in a car. Okay.
yeah.
They don't react the same. Don't compare a watermelon to Kennedy's skull. Come
Exactly. I think you said that about a goat, right?
They also did it. They did experiments with watermelons and with a goat. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And neither one is a human being sitting with a back brace up against a car seat. The
jet effect was debunked about 10, 11 years ago when all of Dr. Luis Alvarez, who did the tests, all of his outtakes were released, all of his raw data. And darn, everything he shot at went forward. And the only thing that went back towards the gun was the watermelon because it has the least resistance.
Exactly.
And he changed the ammunition and everything. I'm sure you've heard about all this. So it's completely been debunked.
Yes, but I mean, my point is that common sense debunks it, that a man is not a watermelon. They'll have to say that to people. A man is not a watermelon. But
he cherry
picked it. But on top of that, you earlier had mentioned about the internet changing things for good or for bad. People have done this. I haven't, but people have looked. You can find on the internet actual shootings of people who got shot in the head.
Oh yeah.
This isn't a test with a goat. This is with real humans, real bullets getting fatally shot. That's why I say I don't want to go looking for it, but I have heard of people who have, and overwhelmingly, it also debunks the so-called jet effect. His reaction to the shot was clearly, one of the shots was clearly from the grassy knoll.
Exactly. And going back to Lee Bowers, who you mentioned, I found this outrageous. If you go on Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is totally reliable.
Sometimes it is.
This is what Wikipedia says about Lee Bowers. Quote, when Bowers was interviewed by assassination researchers Mark Lane and Emil D'Antonio for their documentary film, Rush to Judgment, he clarified that no one was behind the fence when the shots were fired.
That's not true.
I know. Fact check. He told Lane on camera that, quote, the first focus of interest by officials was south and slightly to the east of the triple underpass.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, quote, in this area of the wooden fence,
mm-hmm.
in that area of the wooden fence, quote, no one was there at the moment when the shots were fired. So they totally took him out of context. He's saying here that during the shooting, no one was behind the fence by the underpass. But they clearly omitted him saying the two guys were over here.
The important part, you're right.
This is what we have to deal with, guys. This is just criminal.
And let me put icing on that cake.
Yeah.
But you know what? Let's just go ask Mr. Bowers again. Oh wait, we can't. He's dead.
Yeah. So that just goes to show how they try to.
That's what we have to contend with, and Wikipedia is actually better than some sources because they usually do use footnotes, but they get some things wrong. But on top of that, last time I went to Dealey Plaza and went into the museum, the assassination museum, every single book in that museum tells us or sticks with the mainstream story that it was Lee Harvey Oswald. There is not a single, quote, conspiracy book for sale, at least when I was there,
That was
in the museum.
Since then, they've put in like 2. They put like Sylvia Maher's book.
Maybe they heard me complain.
Huh?
They must have heard me complaining.
Must have heard someone complain.
I lodged a complaint while I was there. I said, why are y'all so one-sided? Why do you not? It's fine if you want to have Posner's Book of Lies up for sale. Be my guest. It's a free country. I'm not for book censorship, but for goodness sake, have a few from the other side of the equation.
I think right now they have like 2. So I think they're. So they're getting there.
That's progress. That's progress. Very good. Very good.
Getting there. They're getting there. And unfortunately, they shut down their reading room and their archive room during COVID, and it hasn't opened since. So
what, it hadn't reopened? I didn't know that. I'm not surprised.
Nope. Like,
but remember this: we still have all kinds of resources out there. We have the Assassination Archives and Research Center. That's a great repository of truth. The Assassination Records and Review Board's work is in the National Archives, and you have to kind of go through a little you have to go you have to go to a different location, get your picture taken, and get a special authorization card to get in there. But you can do it. And then, of course, as you said, there's the internet. Internet alone, we don't trust. But when you have the internet that is corroborated by sources and documents, and then finally, even the redacted documents that the CIA and the government has released slowly in a trickle over the last 50 years, even though most of them have a Sharpie attack, blacked out sections, even within those, you can find some gems of truth. Like I just talked about the Mexico connection, the Cuban connections, the New Orleans nexus. Some of that's leaked out and go. So there's enough documentation out there if a person looks for it. That, again, there's no excuse for the mainstream press to be still carrying this torch for lone nut. Yeah. Hey, this is fun stuff, man. But I am now getting where I have to feel like I've worn you and the viewers out. So any kind of last things you want to do before we call it a night?
Sure. What
I remember what we said before the camera started rolling. Matt and I were talking about. He said I look a lot older than he thought I was. Yes, I'm an old man. It's past my bedtime, Matt.
That's because all I know of the footage of you is from that video with you and that.
That's 10 years old, right?
That Lone Motorhead. So I was like, "Whoa, no, I'm kidding." Okay.
Hey, time happens. I'm okay with it. I like my gray hair.
Which chapter or chapters are you most proud of in your book?
That's also impossible to answer, but I like the way that I began. Since you asked, the way that I began the book, because I lay out that this book is a little different in its approach than most. And I'll just read this to you and I'll let it be. But so it's not a chapter, but it's I like this enough to want to share it with you. If it forced me to be immodest. Page 5 in my book, The 50 Lies. These 50 lies, which again, I'll whittle down from 1,000. These 50 lies may seem randomly ordered, but it can be no other way. This is a complex, interwoven case and cannot be mapped out in a linear fashion. This is algebra, not simple arithmetic. Now, that's a paradox because I just said there is one aspect of this case that can be sort of simple, and that it's pretty simple to see that the government case doesn't work because it's too complex. But at the same time, that's true. But at the same time, when you look at the whole picture, and especially the cover up, it is a tapestry. It is complex. It is, as I said, algebra, not simple math. Just to go on another sentence here, 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle only makes sense when it's assembled into a big picture. And so when people first get an interest in this topic, if they just kind of go on the internet and watch a few videos, or if they just read a book, it's like having a jigsaw puzzle that you want to put together, but you're only grabbing a handful of the pieces. It's a 50,000 piece puzzle. So it takes patience and it takes diligence. And what's great is what I see in your work is that you are able to at least help focus, because at the same time, we can't look at all those pieces at once. We have to focus on aspects of the picture. Mm-hmm. And that's what you do well with the video. And so people really kind of need both. They need the book, and they need videos like this one.
And it's got to be witty.
He brings it full circle.
It has to be.
Well, we have managed to chuckle some this evening. Yes.
Why don't you finish reading that paragraph right there?
Okay. You don't have to twist my arm. I say, I'm mixing metaphors here. I talked about a jigsaw puzzle must be assembled into a big picture, or another metaphor, a cross-woven web, not a single thread. To use the Shakespearean spider metaphor, where do we start unraveling a tangled web of practice deceit? So then I dive in. And on that same page, which goes to your question, line number 50, I kind of do this in reverse order, but this is where it incriminates the government. The impersonators, line number 50. Was someone impersonating Secret Service agents? You and I just talked about that behind the grassy knoll, but other places indicating a conspiracy. Gerald Posner says most of the witnesses later admitted they were mistaken. No, they did not. He lies. He is the 50th lie right there. So that's we're off and running with that. And I don't know. I think that I have to take joy in seeing that the book has been really well received over these 10 years. It's been one of the best-selling self-published books on the topic, often in the top 50 of Kindle, Amazon Kindle rankings for that category. And considering I have exactly zero marketing budget, I'm a poor man, I am proud of that, Matt. So thank you so much for your support.
Hey, thank you for coming on. Thank you very much. It's been fun.
I look forward to watching more Matt soon.
Anytime you want to come back on, just let me know. All right.
We'll do it. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you. God bless.